And now it is time.
Yoo-hoo!
Hello, friends, and welcome to the third annual San Diego Writers Festival. I'm Jeniffer Thompson, and I'm here with Marni Freedman, my co-founder, one of my co-hosts, and we are so glad that you are here. It's been an amazing day so far. I mean, we've heard from so many talented writers, inspirational writers, and now we get to hear from our keynote speaker, once again, award-winning Tayari Jones. We'll bring up the slide for her. We want to thank our keynote sponsors, Marlena Fiel and Ed O'Connor, whose book Called will be released on November 2nd. Three lives inextricably intertwined. A handsome physician obsessed with caring for the underserved, a shy and devout Mennonite nurse, and the other woman, a brilliant green-eyed attorney and activist. Set against the backdrop of World War II, Nazi uprisings, political unrest in Argentina and Paraguay, and the scourge of leprosy left untreated, Dr. John and Clara Schmidt vow to live a life of service, but at what cost? Based on the true events that span 6 decades, Called is an epic tale of adventure and romance that celebrates the triumph of the human spirit. Haley will drop a link so people can pre-order this wonderful book to calledanovel.com. So again, thank you to our sponsors.
Welcome if you're just joining us. I have the privilege and honor of introducing my co-conspirator in crime and festival creating, Jeniffer Thompson. Jeniffer is a personal branding expert, digital marketing strategist, the host of The Premise. I don't know if you guys have heard The Premise. I'm a huge fan. I always learn something. I was saying earlier that Summa Kid, I listened to that one. It's such a good one. There's a lot of them though, just everything that you want to learn about the craft and the business of writing. She's also an author, speaker, and head monkey at Monkey See Media, a website and book packaging design house serving authors since 2004. Co-founder, as I said, of San Diego Writers Festival, serves on the board of the San Diego Memoir Writers Association, and is currently writing her own incredibly poignant coming-of-age memoir. Follow her at monkeyseemedia.com.
Thank you so much, Marni. And I have the pleasure of introducing you. Marni Freedman is a screenwriter, playwright, and award-winning author, writing coach, co-founder, and of course the director of programming of our San Diego Writers Festival. Her play, Two Goldsteins on Acid, was made into the film playing Mona Lisa. Her one-man show, A Jewish Joke, was produced off-Broadway in 2018. Marni produces a yearly theatrical memoir showcase, which we just mentioned, and is an editor of Shaking the Tree, short, brazen memoir. Marni has 2 award-winning books, 7 essential writing tools, and Permission to Roar. You can find Marni at marnifreeman.com, a writing hub to help writers find their authentic voice. And I just want to say that Marni's classes, her books, it's just like being in a room with her. By the way, she was a therapist in a former life, so she brings a lot of her therapy lingo in there, and you just kind of feel like your hand's being held, and you're like, okay, I can do this. So you really do give writers permission to roar, and I thank you for that, Marni. And thank you for doing this crazy festival with me.
Absolutely. Thank you right back. One more quick reminder for our audience on Facebook. We're going to have time for our Q&A at the end of this event with Ms. Tayari Jones, and we want to hear from you. So drop your questions in the comment field, and we'll ask Tayari as many questions as we can. And now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, who's going to speak to us for a few minutes, Tayari Jones. She has been dubbed the Los Angeles Times a bard of the modern South. Tayari Jones confronts issues of race, family, and criminal justice reform in her novels. Her latest, the instant New York Times bestseller, An American Marriage, is an Oprah's Book Club selection and also appeared on Barack Obama's summer reading list, as well as in his year-end roundup. The novel was awarded the Women's Prize for Fiction, Aspen Words Prize, and a double NACP Image Award.
Tayari Jones is also a member of the Fellowship of Southern Writers. She has been a recipient of the Hurston Wright Legacy Award, United States Artist Fellowship, Guggenheim Fellowship, NEA Fellowship, and Radcliffe Institute Bunting Fellowship. Her third novel, Silver Sparrow, was added to the NEA Big Read Library of Classics in 2016. Jones is at work on her newest novel, Old Fourth Ward, which I am so excited about, which follows a woman returning to her hometown following a tragedy and will explore themes of family, change, and identity. She is a professor of creative writing at Emory University.
So, Miss Tayari Jones, we are so damn happy to present you with our highest honor, the 2021 Writer of the Year Award. I wondered if you could hold it up.
Let's take a photo.
And I want to thank you for this award. It means a lot to me that people are still reading and that we're still writing and people are still reading, because, you know, if you're a writer, people are constantly telling you the story is over, the novel is over, but it's not. Our stories are here and they will always be here. And it's just very rewarding.
Amen to that.
To have these tangible reminders.
Wonderful. Well, your stories, I should say, are so beautiful, and I just absolutely love your voice. I'm so excited to get to listen to you talk about your latest novel in your keynote.
Yeah, and if you're just discovering Tayari Jones, you know, go backwards. You're gonna love all of it, the whole journey.
Totally.
You know, well, of course, I can imagine. Silver Sparrow, really wonderful work.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you.
So I think we're going to turn it over to Ms. Tayari Jones for the keynote.
Okay, here we go.
Well, again, I want to thank you for this award and for this opportunity to speak. One thing that I want to talk to you about today is I'm going to talk about my journey as a writer. I know there are a lot of people who want to write, and it may seem like the path has not been cleared for you. But you don't know this, but the life you live is clearing your path, and you don't know the ways that doors are being opened. Even when I received this award, it was on a shelf, and I had a plumber in my house, and the plumber, he didn't say much. He was quiet, kind of taciturn guy. I tried to chat with him. He wasn't interested in chatting with me. He was all about the pipes. But after he left a note, and he said, I see that you received an award for being Writer of the Year, because he had seen this thing. And he said, I have a story to tell. I don't know where to start. And he left his phone number. And I wrote him back. I texted him back and I said, start wherever you are. I have loved to write all my life, but I did not know that I could be a writer. I had never met any writers. I grew up in a house of books, but not a house of literature. My parents are PhDs, but they are in the social sciences. And I did not know that writing novels was like a meaningful contribution to society. I thought that the writing that I did was just something that I did because I was a nice girl, right? Nice girls read, nice girls are in the library. And I didn't know that my observations, just a little girl in Southwest Atlanta, could somehow be observations that had something to do with the world at large. It wasn't until I went to college, I went to Spelman College, and it was there that I met a writer, and she was my teacher. And one day, well, I took her creative writing class, even though freshmen were not allowed, but I really wanted to take the class because before I saw that, I didn't know that you could take a class in creative writing. I didn't know that it was something that you would be allowed to formally study. And I wanted to take the class. And this was before computers, when if you wanted to take a class, you just had to have that you weren't qualified for, because say you were a 16-year-old freshman and you're supposed to be a senior to take the class. Let's say that. You had to get a signature from your advisor. Now, because they're computers, you need passwords, but back then you just needed a signature. And I knew my advisor would never, ever give me permission. I was only a freshman, but I knew that I had to meet a writer who was teaching a class. So I may have signed her name. I may have forged her name. I considered it to be an act of civil disobedience. And I took the class and I met the writer. Her name is Pearl Clegg. She's a playwright now, but at the time she was an adjunct professor. And she asked me one day, she said, what are you thinking about? And I got ready to tell her. And she says, no, don't tell me, write it down. And with that, she became my first audience. The first time I had any inkling that anyone cared about my thoughts and would prefer to see them in writing. And I think of that as a time that my life changed entirely. But it was many years later that I got the courage to call myself a writer. I wanted to do an MFA. I wanted to do a degree, a formal degree in creative writing. No one thought much of this idea. My parents did not think much of this idea. My mother told me that getting a degree in creative writing was akin to getting a degree in basketball. But I wanted it, and I didn't know how to go about it. But I'm a person that believes that when you believe in art, when you believe in it with all your heart, a door will open for you. I wrote a novel. It was a dog of a novel, but I wrote it, and I wrote it on a computer that I saved my money to buy. It was the world's first laptop computer. It weighed 11 pounds. I was very proud of it. Everyone would say to me, "Is that the whole computer?" And I was like, "Yes, it's the whole thing." And I wrote a novel on my lunch hour for my job, because there was no computer provided. And I just wrote a book, and I did the very best I could on it. And it was terrible because I had never written a novel before. But I said to myself, "Self, this novel is finished. It's bad, but it's finished. And you can write another one and it'll be better." And I was determined to keep writing novels that were a little better until I got one that was good enough. Well, out of that dog of a novel, I salvaged about 10 pages and sent them to a little literary magazine that had a circulation of like 12. And it was published, and they paid me like $15. I felt good about myself. I bought some lunch. Fast forward about a year and a half. I was in an elevator, and I literally ran into a woman who would change my life. You can't tell from this, but I'm a really tall person. I'm almost 6 feet tall. And my future mentor, I had no idea she was my mentor, is not tall at all. And I didn't see her, and I bumped into her, and I apologized. And I told her my name, and she recognized my name from this story I published that 10 people had read. Apparently she was one of them. And she invited me to come to Arizona State to study creative writing. The thing is, I wrote the story. I did the best that I could, and then it found its way. I had to really have kind of a come to Jesus with my parents on this idea that I wanted to drop out of a PhD program and study writing full time. My father, everybody was just kind of angry. They saw this as me being frivolous. They saw it as me not being ready to knuckle down and do life's hard work. My father said, "You young people, you believe every day should be the weekend." But I was angry. He was angry. Everyone was angry. But I realized that he thought that going to study creative writing was throwing in his face all the sacrifices he had made so that I would have an opportunity to get a PhD. But I had to explain to him, I had to say, "No, Daddy, your sacrifices are the reason I believe I should be able to study art. This is the reason why I believe my work should be fulfilling. The reason I believe that I should be able to be in my niche, that I should be able to express my thoughts. It's not a rejection of your sacrifice. It's not frivolous. This is the serious work of being alive." And so he came around and drove me all the way to Arizona, and that's where I wrote my first book. It was very modest publication. I was proud of it. I got a couple of reviews, but I didn't get reviewed in the Times. Nothing major happened, but something major happened in my heart because I had written a book about what it was like to grow up in Atlanta. When I was a child in Atlanta, there was a serial murderer that killed about 25 Black children, and 2 of them were students at my school. And I was able to bear witness to that. And that gave me confidence in my voice and what it is that I was supposed to do. That remains the highlight for me. Not the day I published my first book, but the day I finished it. When I printed it out and those papers came off that dot matrix printer hot, and I could smell the ink, and I said to myself, "I've done the thing that I was meant to do." Everything that came later, that was just gravy. But that moment, it was just me. It was late at night. In writing the story that my heart was meant to tell, I felt that I had answered the call that was there for me. And whenever I'm having a hard time in writing, I try to calm down and listen and say, what am I being called? What task am I set forth to do, to accomplish with this work? Most people think of An American Marriage as the story that changed my life, the novel that changed my life. But the real novel that changed my life was Silver Sparrow. And I'm going to tell you a brief story about it, and then we can go to the Q&A. When it came time for me to write my third book, I received a shock. Because my first and second books had not sold well, I was taken out of print, and I had no contract for my third book. I couldn't believe it. I thought I had done my best, and always in my life, when I did my best, a door would open, and I had done my best with these books. I was devastated. I didn't know which way to turn. I had one speaking engagement left on my calendar. It was Key West. And I didn't want to go because I was so embarrassed about this situation I was in. But I was afraid if I didn't go, because I was the only African-American speaking, that maybe they wouldn't invite anybody Black in the future. They would say, we tried diversity, but she didn't show up. So I was taking one for the team. I was so embarrassed because not only did I not have a contract, I was out of print. So I was afraid that I would give my reading and someone would want to buy a book and there would be no books for them to buy. And I would have to tell them the whole story. But I went and I got there and the bookstore owner had a little stack of books on the book table. And I said, oh, where did you get those? Because I was told my books were unavailable. And he said, oh no, these books came. And he showed me a box and I recognized my father's handwriting on the box. And I called him. I said, Daddy, what did you do? He said, well, we had a few books around the house. So I put those in the box. Then I went to your uncle's house because he bought a book and he has not used that book. That is not a used book. That is a new book. Don't let them sell it as a used book because your uncle didn't use it. Anyway, you just sign those books. And then once those books are signed, you just tell the people that you sold out. It wouldn't be a lie. And so I said, okay. So I gave my reading and I signed the 3 or 4 little books. And a woman came up to me and she said, she wanted to buy a book. And I said to her, oh, I'm sorry, I've sold out. I guess I must be popular. And she said, oh, because I heard that you don't have a book contract. And I heard that you were out of print. And I was so humiliated that someone knew this story. But she said, I think I could help you. I didn't know what to make of it. You meet a lot of odd people when you're on the road. I didn't know. But she took me by the hand and she carried me through the crowd and she put my hand in the hand of a publisher. I was still very apprehensive. I didn't think the publisher would accept me because of my numbers. But the publisher, she held me tight by the hand and she was chatting with me. I was trying to get away. And she said, well, I see you're trying to leave, but before you go, tell me, how do you know Judy? And I said, oh, I don't know anyone named Judy. And she said, no, I mean, Judy Blume, who just introduced us. And it was as though my nerdy childhood had come to rescue me in my time of need. And so I looked to thank Judy Blume, and she had vanished in a puff of smoke like a real life fairy godmother. And my students take this story to say, oh, it's just a matter of who you know. But I tell them, no, it's a matter of doing your best. I did my best. I wrote my book, and the book itself opened doors. And this is my message to everyone listening. Do your best. The art will find its way. Believe in not only yourself, but believe in your effort and you will be rewarded. It may take a long time. It may not take the shape that you thought, but it will happen. And so when I accept this award today, I'm accepting it on behalf of everyone who's out there doing your best, because if you are doing your best, you are also the writer of the year.
Oh, that was so wonderful, Tayari. Man, you inspire me. I just want to follow you everywhere you go and listen to your words. You're so great. Oh, wow. Judy Blume, that's so funny.
I know. When I first heard the story, I was like, did you say Judy Blume?
Yes. And you know what? I managed to meet her later, and she was just as lovely and just as generous. But I believe you can tell on the page how people are in the world.
Totally. Oh, I think that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's why I knew I liked you even before I heard you speak.
Well,
but,
thank you.
but yeah, your book is just, we were talking about this earlier and you didn't have the pleasure of hearing us, but like your sentences are so beautiful. And I just felt swept away in the writing, and, you know, just your voice comes across. I can tell that you're very caring and compassionate and you cared about your characters. And, you know, I felt that deeply when I was reading this book.
Well, thank you.
I love the message of, you know, do your best and the art will find its way. That faith that you have of, you know, putting your best stuff out there. And because we never know the path, but I mean, who would have thought that Judy Blume would find you in that moment and put you just can't plan these things.
You cannot.
Did you read? No, I was gonna say, did you read Judy Blume when you were a kid?
Am I an American child? Was I an American child? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of my early childhood experiences is that I had this Judy Blume book. I loved it. And I left it somewhere. And this other little girl took it home. And I was so angry because she had stolen my book. I wanted my mother to call the police. And my mother came to the school and she gave us all a talking to. But my mother gave the little girl a new book because my mother said, if children are stealing books, it is a cause for celebration. And my mother gave the little girl a new book. I was furious. I was like, she gets a new book. I didn't understand it, but I look back on that now as one of important lesson in compassion that my mother taught me.
Very cool. Wow.
We're wondering and hoping that you would talk to us about your new book and your new process.
Ma'am? No. Okay, this is why I will not. I'll tell you why I won't. Hear me out. Hear me out. I think that when you talk about the book too much, you talk it out and you don't have anything left for the page.
Yeah, I hear that.
It's like a relationship. If you talk about your relationship too much, you can have your whole.
You're doomed.
That's the
whole chit chat with your girlfriends. You have talked out the whole relationship.
I respect that. I do. I'm just incredibly curious. Okay, we'll move on to another question.
I have a question. When do you think it will be released?
When I finish it, ma'am.
Okay. We're pressuring you.
You had a question, Marni?
I just love you.
I totally ditto.
Okay, let's we have a lot of questions from viewers, and Jeniffer works with writers all the time. I work with writers all the time. So people have been emailing us, and so we have a lot of things that they're wondering. Some of them might be annoying questions. I don't know if this is an annoying question, but many people wanted to know about American Marriage becoming a movie, and if that was in process.
Well, the thing about things becoming movies, it's such a long road. Yes. So many people have to cooperate to get that thing on the screen. So I'm going to say it's in the pipeline, but they're just I never knew how many steps and how many false starts and how people can get so excited about their book being a movie and it may never happen. But I will say this, I am working on a screenplay, which has been a remarkable experience. Because the difference between screenwriting and novel writing, a novel is all about how does this feel? How does it feel to be betrayed? How does it feel to be married? How does it feel to be confined? How does it feel to be in love? A screenplay is, what does confinement do? What does confinement say? Like, what does confinement look like? It's an entirely different set of questions for the same situation. I thought it'd be easy for me since I wrote the book. I just crank out a screenplay.
It's such a different medium. It's like one's the whole different interior life, and the other thing is, well, can I see that? How do I see that? Show me how can I see that?
Yeah. I'm totally intimidated by it.
In a way, a novel is not a collaboration.
Right.
Good point.
With a novel, it's my way or the highway. That's it. But with the screenplay, it's just so many more people. But it's been good to, flex a new muscle, learn something different.
I want to ask a question about Celestial, if I can.
Okay.
If we can take it to the book. So I absolutely loved her character. I love that she was this strong, powerful woman, but she also had, such a weakness. And she felt like, am I doing it right? Am I making the right choices? She had that moral ambiguity that you talked about last time. So I love her, but I want to know about her name. Where did the name Celestial come from?
Now, this answer is not going to be as exciting as one would hope. I met a woman named Celestial, and her mother is named Celeste. And I really like the idea of mother-daughter lineage. Women don't often name their children after themselves. And I just loved it. I said to her, I'm gonna name the character.
I'm going to use that.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
I liked it. And it's funny, and it worked out because I do think that characters' names reflect parental ambition. Like some writers look at the name as, does this character seem like a celestial? But instead you have to say, does this parent seem like she would have parents that would name their child Celestial? And her parents are so over the top. So absolutely they would. So
totally.
Even when you write memoir, if you have a memoir class, one thing you have your students do is tell the story of their name because it contextualizes them.
That's cool. That's very cool. A lot of times I'm writing a memoir and I'll have to change some of the names. And it's so hard because I think that name is so perfect for that person. It's just so perfect. How am I going to come up with a better name? How do you come up with your names?
Well, like, okay, Celestial, Roy, and Andre. Celestial, it's so her parents doing. Roy, Big Roy passed that name. So I needed a name for Big Roy since I knew Roy would be a junior. So I had to think of a name, a generational name that was, that seemed appropriate. I like the one syllable because if we're going to call one person big, like you, for example, Big William is too many syllables.
True.
You need something that goes with Big Roy, Little Roy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Andre, I felt like his name was a completely generational name. Like when I was coming up, there was always a boy named Andre in your class. So I felt like it marked him for a particular time and place.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you keep a log of like cool names that you discover that you think, I'm going to use that later? No. Mm-hmm.
No. I mean,
I always want to.
When I started getting super deliberate like that, the work loses some of its spontaneity.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I also think if it's a good name, I'll remember it next time. Like if it's not good enough for me to remember, I don't need it. However, my mentor told me that's young people's thinking.
Mm.
I'm wondering what topics are fascinating you out there in the world? What conflicts, what struggles, human struggles are calling to you, starting to speak to you?
Gentrification.
That's
on my mind because I've moved back home to Atlanta after many years, and it's not the town I grew up in, but I'm a native. I was born downtown. I feel very protective. I've written books about the city, but the city is changing. But then I've had to ask myself, am I gentrifying the neighborhood I live in? I mean, I'm a native, I'm Black. I think, can I gentrify things? And I think the answer is kinda. So, the HOA drama, because homeowners association are like a hallmark of gentrification. And also HOAs are also a vehicle for racism. It's just a lot going on. And maybe it's just because I've been locked in my house for 18 months. I'm obsessed with my neighborhood and what it all means. But that is definitely something that's really on my mind as I'm working on a new project. Like, what is Atlanta?
Well, you really brought Atlanta to life. I've never been there, and I didn't know much about it. And I felt like I got it for the first time, and I fell in love with it for the first time. So I want to go.
Thank you. That makes me, it's my natural habitat. And I think that there's no way I'm illegible without an understanding of Atlanta.
I've always wanted to visit Atlanta, and I felt the same way. Like it really became, almost a character in the story. And I love it when a writer can do that for me and take me there and make me want to, go experience it for myself. Very cool. But I also appreciated the small town. I will come visit. Absolutely.
We're going to write you letters. We decided.
We've decided we're going to write you letters.
We're going to write you letters.
You said something, awesome. Letter writing is such a beautiful thing. I received a letter recently on a card from a client. It was an actual letter. And I thought, wow, no one ever does this anymore. We need to bring back the art of letter writing for sure. Mm-hmm. So I'm with you on that one. You said something in your last segment about putting your book down for a year because you were asking the wrong question. I wanted to kind of go back to that. How did you think about it a lot? Did you obsess over it, or did you just quit thinking about it for that year?
No, I obsessed over it. I thought about it. I didn't put it down. I kept messing with it, but it was wrong. Also, it was due. The book was like a year and a half overdue at this point, and I could not land the plane. Also, I had just a very difficult time with this novel because it did not meet genre expectations. Because everyone wanted a novel about one woman's brave fight to free her man. So I felt like I was fighting this book. I was fighting for this story's right to exist. And then the ending wasn't right. So I couldn't even say, you are rejecting this book because of genre expectations, even though that was part of it. I knew it wasn't right. It was very stressful. I couldn't land the plane, and I felt like I was failing at this book. I wasn't sanguine about it, but I didn't know what to do. But just again, I kept trying, and I kept reminding myself, I'm doing my best, even if it's overdue, even if everyone is anxious and people are, grumbling. I could not I knew I was doing my best, and that was all I could do. All you can ever do is your best.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever think to yourself, I can't ask anyone what the right answer is. I know I have to find it in myself. Or did you reach out to people and see if they could help you find that answer?
Oh
or
no,
ask the right question,
I was done with everyone in my life, because at this point, all the people who I usually used to trust to read my work, they were all kind of mad at the story. They were like, well, what about one brave woman's fight to free her man? One friend of mine wrote me this long thing saying, how come there isn't a whole chapter on organizing to free Roy? I'm like, because it's not that kind of book.
It's not that book. Yeah.
But when you write a story that is not the expected story, you don't really have a lot of support. And it was the first time in my life too that I had written a novel that was disruptive to my core readership. Like my other books were books that were books where my core readership was like, yep, I know that experience. Thank you for saying it. I'm so glad someone finally said it. And this was a very disruptive story because it was challenging kind of tropes of identity that we hold dear. And that was the first time I had done that. And that took a different kind of bravery than like as a Black writer, you can write something that challenges the dominant American ideology and you feel kind of badass about it. Like, yep, I said it. I said what I said. You feel good about yourself, right? You're like, I'm taking a stand for truth. But when you write something that challenges a cultural assumption within your culture, that's a whole different kind of vulnerability. I remember I was at a reception and there was a Black man there who's an editor. He's a friend of mine, like kind of friend, like we don't hang out, but we're friendly. And he said, well, what are you working on? And I told him what the book was about. It's about a woman, her husband has been wrongfully accused, but a lot of things happen. She doesn't wait for him. He was so horrified. He said, I got to go get a drink. And he walked away. He did not come back. Like he didn't even want to talk about it as an idea. Wow. And I felt like, what does it mean if you're upset at me for just thinking about something? I do not have a wrongfully incarcerated husband on whom I'm not waiting, but it's so disruptive just to consider a role for Black women other than endless sacrifice.
Listen, I want to say something about that. So when I was reading this book, originally I thought that's what it was going to be about, right? It's about wrongful incarceration. She's going to wait for him. It's that love story. And I was so in love with the story because it wasn't that, because we got to see the ugliness that's happening. We know it's happening. We know it needs to change. We got to hear about it, but we followed a love story. We followed a real life love story, not just big, Olive and Big Roy and Celestial. It was a love story and it was about relationships. And I just thought that was so cool that you didn't harp on that message that was expected. So I applaud you for sticking with that. That was awesome.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's really a challenge when there's an urgent problem. Like, I wonder if I could have written this book in 2020. I wonder if in 2020, when, everyone's in the streets about racial justice, if I would have felt the luxury of looking at this love story, if I would have felt really not pressured, but like this year during 2020, I had a hard time writing fiction because it seemed like the world is on fire and I can't be here playing with my imaginary friends in my head.
Right.
I wrote nonfiction. I hate nonfiction. I love reading it, but I'm terrible. I don't like writing. It's very difficult for me, but I wrote nonfiction pieces because it seemed like it was a moment for nonfiction.
Agreed.
So I have a question about the story existing somewhere that and maybe it's a spiritual question, I'm not exactly sure, but you weren't following what people were saying, this is what the story should be. What were you following that was saying, this is what the story is?
Well, one, I am stubborn, but also I was offended by what the story should be. I felt like I started identifying closely with Celestial. I started feeling that to write this book, I was going through to write this book what Celestial was doing to be in the book, which is just by entertaining the idea that Celestial was an artist and was doing something other than completely dedicating herself to the role of wife. So I started getting mad on her behalf. I think I started getting defensive about the idea that this is women's role. And I just put my foot down and I didn't know if I was going to be able to pull it off. I thought perhaps, my ambition was greater than my ability, but I said, I just refuse refuse to write this boring book you all are all pressuring me to write. I'm not going to sit up here and write a book that's in service to what I think is an unnuanced idea.
And for those of you out there, that is not an easy thing to do. I mean, I think you're making it look easy with your boldness, but it's, you know, when people are saying, go this way, go this way, go this way, it's hard to say,
Well, here's the thing. I had published 3 books at this time. I was proud of all 3. And I know how many people out there pray to publish 1, and I had been given 3. And so if I had to not publish a 4th one, I would rather not have a 4th book than have a book that I'm not proud of. So I was willing to say, well, maybe it's time for me to retire. Maybe this is what I've been given, and be grateful for what I've been given. And that would just be it. And I was prepared to face that, even though, I mean, it was harder when I thought I wasn't going to be able to publish Silver Sparrow, because Silver Sparrow was a book that I wrote as a gift to my sister. When I say it changed my life, that's how it changed my life. And when I thought I couldn't publish that one, that was much more heartbreaking than the idea that An American Marriage may not see the light of day, because I just felt I had already been so blessed.
Let's talk about the title, An American Marriage. When you first started writing this book, did you already have the title in mind?
Nope, I'm not good at titles. When it comes to titles, I'm kind of extra. I'm like a 15-year-old girl writing the names of my hypothetical children in my notebook. You know, lots of apostrophes, hyphens, capital letters in the middle. It's just too much. So I knew that I was going to have to get another title. It's happened with all my books. And so the editor said, well, let's brainstorm. And I said, oh, we could call this book An American Marriage, because when you say things are American, people think they're important. I was just being cute. And he liked it. Short version is he liked it. I didn't. I came up with other titles. He didn't like those. I didn't either. And I went back to Atlanta to talk to my mentor about the fact that they wanted to call the book An American Marriage. Because to me, An American Marriage sounded like a book about some white people in Connecticut getting a divorce.
Totally.
Totally. And I felt I was trying to disguise the book, because, you know, that is a thing in publishing. I was like, do they not want people to know I'm me? Anyway, it was a lot. But she finally said to me, 1, this is an American marriage because this incarceration thing is really unique to the US. We incarcerate more of our citizens than anyone else. But what she really moved me with is when she said, being able to call yourself American, because I've never been called American without another word, you know? And so to be able to say, you're an American writer, she said, that's your civil right. It's your civil rights is about you being able to claim your citizenship. And so if you want to say this book is called An American Marriage, you have that right. If you don't like the font, you don't like the way it looks on the page, whatever, but don't reject it because you don't think that you own that title, that you have a right to it. And so I thought about it. And then I was in DC with Jackie Woodson, and we were taking pictures. The light was nice. And she took a picture of me with a flag. It's a big American flag. It's DC, flags everywhere. And I said, Jackie, do you think that a Black person can be in a picture with an American flag and it not be ironic? Because, you know, if you think about this summer before last, last summer, there was a New Yorker cover where there's a little Black boy and he's eating an ice cream pop, and it's the red, white, and blue, the bomb pop, and he's eating an ice cream pop. And it was clear that that drawing was about George Floyd, even though it's just a kid with the ice cream pop, because it's a Black child with a red, white, and blue ice cream pop. So whenever you see Black people and the word American or American iconography, it is in juxtaposition to what America says it is versus what America is. Necessarily. Anything, now you're going to start looking, and anytime you see a Black person with a flag, it's a statement. It's not just 4th of July. So anyway, I told my editor, okay, let's call it An American Marriage. This is my favorite part of the story. He said, good, because we have already designed the jacket.
And was this it, or was it?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. Gorgeous. I love it. It's got gold on it. It's so pretty.
That's like a thing. They're like, we're going to spring for gold.
Yeah. You're like, whoa, yeah. I mean, that's a big deal when you get embossing in gold on a cover. You know you're something special, right?
I do feel special. And if you take the book jacket off, my initials are on it.
Is it? Are they?
I have a question about.
Oh, they sure are.
I know.
Embossed.
Yes,
cool.
that was a little gift they gave me. I'll never forget the exciting run up to the publication of this book. All those little things just meant so much to me.
Can you say a little bit more about your experience with that?
With what? The embossing?
Just the experience, the run up to,
Run up and maybe the call from Oprah, what that was like.
Well, one thing I learned in the run up to this book is that a lot of work goes into a book becoming a bestseller.
Yeah.
I had my other books before and they sold about, a handful of copies, mostly to my mom. And, I was doing things like I was sending out postcards and having bookmarks printed and doing all these things because, I wanted to be active and I wanted to get the word out. But when An American Marriage, in the lead up to it, I was with a new publicist and everything. We just did so much work. We met with bookstore owners beforehand all over the country. I must have done 10 cities before the book came out to position it so that when things happen, we would have our powder was dry, I guess is what we'll say. And I was at once delighted, but then I also felt a little sad for my other books. And it reminded me of something that happened when my first book was out. I went to the Bread Loaf Writers Conference and there were all these other, debut writers, and they were all sitting around chatting about what they had worn to their luncheon to meet the media. I had no idea that other people were out having luncheons to meet the media, let alone what they had worn. And I remember I went to my little dorm room and I just cried because I was like, how will I ever catch up? Other people are having luncheons to meet the media. I had never had a luncheon of any type. And then when the American Marriage happened, I had a luncheon to meet the media. And
you got your luncheon.
Yeah, I was like, where's my luncheon to meet the media? So that was super exciting. And also was great to work with the team because I was with Algonquin Books at the time. It was a small team, about 6 people, and we were making it happen. And I just enjoyed that teamwork on it.
Yeah.
Say more about what does each person do on the team? I don't think people know much about the behind the scenes of that.
Well, there's one person whose whole job it is to talk to the small bookstore owners about which books are exciting this year. There's someone else whose whole job it is to try to get you placed in magazines. It's someone else whose whole job it is to figure out what all your publicity stuff is going to look like. Someone else whose whole job it is to figure out where you should go on your tour. And someone else whose whole job it is to keep you from having a nervous breakdown in the meantime.
It's daunting for a new author because it's like, how am I ever going to get there? How am I ever going to get that kind of attention to my book? And one author to have to write the book and then be the salesperson and get it all out there. I mean, it's incredibly daunting. Do you have advice?
Yeah, I do have some advice. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. Because there's only so much you can do. Like I said with my earlier book.
Keep writing.
Yeah, with any problem you have, the next book is the only thing that can solve it. So even Silver Sparrow, my other 2 books were out of print. And I imagine Silver Sparrow, I imagine her as a literal sparrow, like she's a bird and she has a piece of twine in her beak, and connected to the twine are my other books. And she's like pulling them in her beak. She's pulling them along. Silver Sparrow saved the other 2 books. And my other books had not been translated into other languages. And American Marriage was translated into lots of other language. And she pulled the other ones along with her.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I endorse the slow burn career. You don't want to come out the gate too hot. Yeah. Because if you come out the gate really hot, it's possible that the whole rest of your career is downhill. And that's
just going to burn.
It's much better to be like, I think I can. I think I can. I think I can.
I always tell my authors the number one thing that sells your first book is your 3rd book, but apparently it's your 4th book.
Or your 5th.
But the thing is, if you enjoy the writing, which I do, because sometimes people say, you know, how did you keep going? I'm like, it's what I do. I enjoy it. I love writing. So it's not like I was going to give up writing because my career wasn't where I wanted to be, because I didn't write the book for a career. When I wrote my first book, I didn't even know what an agent did. I wasn't professionalized. I just had passion for what I was doing. And if you do it because you enjoy it, you don't get mad about the career stuff in the same way. You don't feel like why did I waste my time? No time I ever spent on a book is wasted. Like I've written in An American Marriage, I probably threw out 300 pages. I didn't feel like my time was wasted. I enjoyed writing those 300 pages. They just didn't work. But if I hadn't enjoyed it, I think I would be different.
Did you work with an editor, or did you know where to cut?
Oh, I know where to cut.
How do you just know where to cut?
You read it out loud, and when it starts dragging, like if you can't bring yourself to keep reading it, you should cut that.
Yeah.
It takes forever.
Some writers. Some writers they can't do it themselves. So that's
because they're not reading that book out loud, are they? No. But when you read it out loud, you're like, and then you realize you've been repeating yourself and other stuff, and you just scratch that stuff out.
Exactly.
Is there anything that you really thought with, like, I don't know if I should cut it, I want to keep it? Any scene?
That's not my, everybody has things that are their hangups, but cutting is, I probably may cut too hard. I wonder sometimes if there are things I leave on the floor that could be kept. But no, I don't have any problem with removing content, because I always felt like if I need some more, I'll just make some more. Because you can. I do think the more you've written, like when you, let's say the first time you write a 20-page story, you're like, I've reached 20 pages. You are not going to cut 5 pages out of that story, because you've just learned the stamina to get to 20, and the page numbers are meaning something to you. But once you've written a lot of things, chapters come, chapters go.
Yeah.
And
I have a question on
what's that? What did you say?
You who? Me?
Tayari?
Yeah. I said, because even though you cut it, you still have it. It's not like you shredded it. You have it.
And that could be another book. You never know.
Yeah, you still have it.
Yeah.
I have a question about creativity. I'm writing a book about just creativity and what it takes to dive in, to get that spark, to keep going. One person said to me, I feel like I've lost it and I don't know how to connect with it again. And I'm wondering if you have ever felt that, and then if you know how to reignite it for yourself, or do you always just have that spark?
No, it's happened to me. It's terrible. It's a terrible feeling, particularly if you're an artist and you've built so much of your identity around the idea that you're a creative person, and then you can't do it, or you feel like you can't do it. It's usually like you just can't do it right now. It will come back, but I tell you what, it won't come back. It won't come back if you don't sit down and try. I always tell my students, you can't say you have writer's block if you've just been watching Law and Order. That does not count. You can only say you have writer's block if you have tried for 30 days straight to write and you can't. Then we can say you have writer's block. Because a lot of times you just don't even want to sit down and try. And it's not going to happen if you don't go to your desk and try.
Yeah. I write 12 minutes a day. And usually it's way more, but just sit down and try and write for 12 minutes, and never do I find that I don't have something to say.
How do you get to 12? Why 12?
A friend of mine told me, and he got it from someone else who I don't remember, but Lee Wind is a friend of mine. And he said, yeah, just write. Because I was having trouble getting my book done. And he said, just commit to 12 minutes a day, Jeniffer. And I said, okay, I can do that. I can do 12.
Right.
I could have said 10, right?
Well, but is there something that
I wrote it.
do, Tayari, that gets you back into a creative space? Is there going into nature or something?
It's mysterious, and nature is awesome if you can get it. Like I don't, when I go away to work, it's usually when the book is humming and I just like, everybody's getting on my nerves. I need someone to go away so that I can get my work done. But if I'm just trying to get the party started, I'm desperate and I'll do anything. I drink coffee. I go to different places. I just have to keep trying, but I wish I had some way I could just flip the switch, but it really doesn't go that way. I just keep trying. I think of it like this. You have a pen and it's not working and you're like, scribble, 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 it's not working. And then all of a sudden it starts to work. So this same gesture that was yielding nothing suddenly is yielding something. That's what I have to do. It's the hardest. To me, writing a novel is the opposite of being in love. You know how being in love, the beginning is the fun part and then it goes downhill? For me, the novel is the opposite. The beginning sucks. And when it's going well is when it's over.
You said something earlier in an earlier segment that a story should challenge you. And you know it's right when it's challenging you or things that you hadn't thought of. Can you speak more to that?
Well, it takes me a few years to write a book. So it has to be an emotional entanglement that's such that I can think about this for a couple years. So it has to be something that does cause me to stretch and think. For example, when I was writing Silver Sparrow, it's about two sisters who have the same dad, but one of them is a secret. And I had to really look at both girls' point of view, but I had to also challenge myself to look at the father's point of view and understand the way he explains the world to himself and not villainize him, which was a challenge to write. Because you think if you're writing about this man, he's got this secret family, and I had to just stretch and try. And then I'm a better person by the end of the book. For me, a novel is not me telling the good news to an audience. The novel is me looking for the good news.
That's awesome. And following the story. And I love the fact, the idea of, when it's right. You really do. You know it
when it's not right. You're like, something's not right about this. It's almost like you ever put on an outfit and you put on this belt and you're like, this belt is not quite right. Like you understand why you thought that belt would work, but it's not quite right. And you know it. And in the book, it's the same way. Like, you know it. Even if other people try to tell you that belt looks good, that belt don't match that dress. You know it.
Oh, I've been there. That looks great on you. Oh, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, no. Totally. And then when you get the right belt, you're just like, there it is.
There it is.
And that's how the book feels. When you get that right thing clicks into place. And my second novel, which is such a weird book, bless my heart with that one, but with my second novel, I had like this kind of deranged mother. And it wasn't until like the penultimate chapter that it came to me why the mother was so deranged. And it made the whole book click into place. Before, that book was as though you ever have a sweater and you button it wrong and it looks like, so just imagine if you had never seen a sweater before and you saw this strange garment, you would like, you should just throw that thing away. But really it just needs to be rebuttoned. And when I realized what was wrong with the mother, it just rebuttoned the sweater and it laid flat.
Can you talk about your process of moving chapters around and playing with time?
Oh, so what I do is I lay all the chapters out on the floor and I just experiment with putting them in different order.
So you do it physically?
Oh, I am so analog. I write on typewriters, right?
No, I love typewriters. I love them.
Yeah, I'm a very analog person. I don't like messing around on the computer that much. So I print out all the pages. So I type them on a typewriter, then I key them in. On the day that I don't have anything new to say, I key in the typewritten pages into the computer because it has to be done. And at least I'm moving forward. Then I print it all out and then I lay it on the floor and try to say, well, this goes with this. What if this goes over here? Just how would that work? And then I read the whole thing out loud, not over endorse that technique.
Yeah. In a sense, you're trying to tell us something here.
What program do you use to write? Do you use Word or?
I just use Word. I know I hear people using Scrivener.
Yeah. I like Word.
I hear it's awesome. I just say whatever works.
It's too organized for me.
I would be so terrified to write my words on a typewriter and then worry that something would happen to those pages. And that's it. Those are the pages. What if there's a flood? What if they get lost? No, all right.
Not going to happen. Also, people write longhand. It's the same thing, just more legible.
True. Or is it? Yeah.
We have another
a typewriter.
It makes all that noise. It's so satisfying.
Clickety clack. You're right. That sound.
You raise a ruckus. Nobody can say you're not working.
That's true.
And when you compose on the computer, you can get in a mood and delete a whole page and it's gone. But on the typewriter, if you get in the mood, you rip the page out, ball it up, throw it across the room, and then you can come
it's still there.
Out, and you still have it.
Totally.
We have another couple of questions coming in. One of them is, what's the favorite advice that you have for your students? I'm just going to partially answer this by saying, I'm guessing it's read it out loud.
Read it aloud.
No, the best,
some more.
The best tip I have for my students, as I talked about it a little bit earlier, is the budget. You have, imagine that you have a budget for your story. If your story is under budget, it's boring. If it's over budget, you have too much going on. For example, I know I'm probably dating myself, but you remember E.T., the extraterrestrial? Remember E.T.?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. If you notice with E.T., that artist blew their entire budget on the alien. That's why everything else in that story is really bland. They live in a bland subdivision. You don't even remember anybody's name except for Elliot, because the entire budget was spent on the alien. When you put an alien in your story, there's no room for anything else. So you have to say, okay, what all can fit in the story? And you can tell when the story is over budget or you wasted, like giving your characters outrageous names, that costs you money out your budget. So you don't want too many people in one story with outrageous names. Plot twists, those are expensive, but if you stay within the budget, and you can earn extra money for the budget.
How do you do that? How do you earn extra money?
You can only earn so much. You can't earn more than 10%. You can't be more than 10% over budget and still be allowed to be in my class. But you can earn it through really gorgeous writing. You can earn it through humor. There's some things, because like if a story has a really good voice, people will allow you a little more latitude with stuff. But you have to be always mindful of the budget. So when you spend, like every character, like I say, people, you've got 5 brothers in this story. You're really trying to hire all 5 brothers in your budget. I bet you can make this work with 3 brothers. And then you can use the money that you were spending on the other 2 brothers to do something else. Buy yourself a better setting.
How do you get that gauge to figure out what the budget is?
You can just tell. Like once I explain it to students, when we're reading stories, they can tell the budget. They can be like, I just think this is kind of expensive.
I'm over budget.
When he found out that his father was a werewolf, that's just really expensive. Can't he just get married, and get the same emotional thing?
I love it.
I was told you could only do one big lie. That was it. And if you did more than that,
I was told you can have one fatal car wreck for your entire career. Choose wisely.
Ooh, that's a challenge. That's what that is.
Expensive.
Do you have a set of questions that you ask yourself when you are reading through your book? Does this do this? Does it move it? Would you share a couple of those with us?
What does your main character want, and where is that made clear? That's the most important question you have to ask. And so I take it, like if I'm writing short stories, particularly, I take a highlighter and I say, how do I prove this is what she wants? Besides her saying, I want this. Where is it apparent?
Yeah.
But I do that at the end. It's like kind of like checking your work. I don't fool with this kind of stuff when I'm actually composing. Because when I'm composing, I'm just praying to get to the next page. It's a kind of a desperate process.
Sure.
So when it's all over, then I go back and I go through. And I also say, with each character, I say, if this character could summarize his or her position, what would she say? And that also lets me know I have a good grip on each character.
Do you ever do like an outline of your characters, like a little bio of where they were born? And no, God, no, she hates that. We lost her. That's so funny because I hear so many writers say they do that. And I think to myself, do I need to do that? But I do feel like it gives too much away of what's supposed to be in the book, right? So that's what I'm hearing from you.
It's going to be your personality. So much of your process, so much I think of learning to be a writer is learning what is your process and what works for you.
Totally.
And now I'm going to use another metaphor, another like outrageously
I love them.
metaphor. You ever see someone you think their hairstyle is adorbs? You love their hair and you say, oh, girl, what'd you do with your hair? And she says, I use this product, and this product. And you try them. And let's say you like her conditioner, but you don't like her shampoo. You will not continue using that shampoo that doesn't work because someone, you know that everybody's hair is different, but hey, good looking out on the leave-in conditioner. And you add that leave-in conditioner to your regimen, but you don't feel that all their stuff. And that's the same way when people give advice about writing, I say, oh, thank you. And I'll try those things. Some of them work, some of them don't, but you don't keep trying to make it work if it doesn't. You're learning your process. I mean, that's what you learn when you go to get your MFA, is that you learn, you're learning your process and you're learning to be a better editor of your own work.
Yeah. Wow. You are fantastic. I love you.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah. 100%. You are just amazing. I know, right? Well, come back next year. Well, you got a book coming out soon, so
whenever that book comes out, with no pressure, we will be overjoyed to have you come back.
To have you back. Yeah, you're just amazing. Like, your writing is amazing, but you as a person are just a badass. Thank you for coming.
But I got to tell you, I have not been a badass my whole life. I was a mousy child.
What?
No, I was a mousy, afraid child.
Huh.
What
changed?
College. I just think that's why it's so important that you choose the right college. I went to Spelman College, which is a Black women's college in Atlanta, and I learned that there were so many possibilities for me, and everyone seemed to think I was capable. And when you're around people who think you're capable, you start thinking, maybe I'm capable. Maybe there are lots of ways as a woman to matter. You know, it's not just whether or not, like when I was in high school, I thought girls had to be cute. You know, like you had to be pretty, you had to be cute. And I was a perfectly nice, perfectly plain child. And I thought no one is ever going to know me for my cuteness. But when I went to college, I learned there were you can be known for doing your best at something, and people will respect your hard work. And it changed my life.
That's fantastic.
And we've had so many people just writing about your boldness, and people saying they feel like it's giving them permission to be bold.
Yes, and be bold and be you. Even if you're not bold, some people just aren't bold. But it doesn't mean you're not brilliant. It doesn't mean you're not bright. It doesn't mean that you don't have a quiet genius that will shine through. So if I enjoy bold, I do. I love it. But I also know a lot of people who aren't terribly bold, but they're changing the world. So the key is to find out what is your thing and be fully yourself. And when you'll feel it when it clicks into place, and you'll just feel your creativity open because you found what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So good. Yeah. Thank you. Tayari Jones, you are wonderful. An American Marriage, folks, go buy it, a novel, wherever you get your books.
And read her other books too. It's like a masterclass, each one.
Totally.
Gorgeous. But you know, when we thought about having you here, I didn't realize how you would take us on this journey and share so much of your heart with us. And I just want to thank you for that.
Well, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. Writers' festivals are so important because they allow readers and writers to connect and for us to make community together, and we inspire each other. And thank you. I mean, in this difficult year, it's just a pleasure to be able to join with you, to fellowship with you like this. So thank you.
Oh, that's
I'm not
wonderful.
Crying.
Yeah.
I'm not crying. Nobody's crying.
Totally. Well, you have a wonderful night, and thank you once again from everyone in San Diego and everyone who has joined us from all over the world. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.